recommended articles of impeachment to the full House. In theory, however, the House of Representatives could set up a special panel to handle proceedings or just hold a full floor vote on such articles without letting any committee vet them. But they haven't put that together yet. When a full House votes on articles of impeachment, if at least one gets a majority vote, the president is impeached, with essentially the equivalent. This is pretty much essentially the equivalent of being indicted, which means you're not going to jail, but you're accused of a crime. You're just accused of a crime. When you got to be convicted in the Senate. So, yeah, right now what's happening is 6 House committees are expected to continue investigating Trump on these possible impeachable offenses, which I really think shouldn't just be the Ukrainian thing. Like, there's been tons of things with the porn star payoffs, with the Trump University, with the violation of the Emoluments Clause, not putting your assets in a blind trust when you become president, making tons of money off the presidency, tons of instances of abuse of power and things like that. Like, there's a lot of places people could go. Democrats could go with impeachment. Are they going to go all those things? Probably not. Nancy Pelosi's already said that she wants to focus more on the Ukrainian thing, which I think is a little bit more politically risky because not everyone cares. What I think you really have to do is not just paint a picture, not just rely off a single story, but really try and paint a picture of this president abusing his power for his own personal gain and saying time and time and again that he is going to just do whatever it takes to A, enrich himself, and B, stay in office. So I think if you paint that picture through various instances, not just this one Ukrainian incident, I think that could be a very successful way to make that case. But yeah, so these 6 House committees are going to try and do that. If findings are determined to be insufficient evidence of wrongdoing, then they dies right there. But if it is determined to be sufficient, the House will hold a vote on the floor, which right now 218 people are needed to impeach in the House. Right now, according to our Glenn Bradford, 223 House Democrats back an impeachment action, so that is something that they do not have to worry about at this time. They could impeach him really tomorrow if they want, if we look at some of the whip counts on this. So that is something to definitely take into consideration, but then, of course, it would go to the Senate where they would hold a trial. So, yeah, that is pretty much your primer on the history of an impeachment. Right now, take a look at where your lawmakers stand. 220 Democrats support an impeachment inquiry. One Democrat, 15, 0 Republicans support an impeachment inquiry as well. 143 Republicans in the House, anyway, are against it. 15 Democrats are against it. So 221 right now, at least according to the New York Times. Our count is 223. So, give or take. The idea is they have enough to impeach him, like, tomorrow if they wanted. So, the only people who are not now are undecided. And these, again, are responses since these Ukrainian allegations have emerged. Anthony Brindisi of New York says we cannot play politics with the national security. We need more facts. Joe Cunningham says it would be bad for the country. Tulsi Gabbard says it's not good either. That's a big thing. She's running for president. That's a very bad idea. Jared Golden's not for it. Kendra Horn, Eddie Bernice Johnson says we'll wait and see. Ron Kine, Connor Lamb, Ben McAdams, Colin Peterson, Max Rose, Chotil Torres Small, Jeff Andrew, Terry A. Sewell are the people who have said since Ukraine that they will not come out in support of impeachment. So that is very interesting. So Lucy Bass still hasn't said anything since these Ukrainian allegations have come out. But yeah, these are all people who are in favor of impeachment. 220 odd people. Some say 221. Some say 223. So pretty much the idea is they have enough to impeach on the Democratic side. So right now there is 0 who support it, 143 do not support it, and 55 awaiting responses at this time from the Republican side. So that is where we are in terms of which lawmakers support it and which don't. Really no surprises there yet. Yeah, so that pretty much is how it stands I want to turn now to one of our good, well-respected columnists here on the show, and that is Mehdi Hasan. We are checking in on him on The Intercept. He's out with a new headline just today. Democrats, please don't mess this up. Impeach Trump for all his crimes, not just for Ukraine. Are Democrats preparing to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory? Speaker Nancy Pelosi's announcement on Tuesday that the House of Representatives would hold an official impeachment inquiry over Trump's phone call with the president of Ukraine and his request for dirt on Joe Biden and his son Hunter was a welcome one. But on Wednesday, according to several reports, Pelosi and senior Democrats agreed in a private meeting they should narrow their impeachment investigation of Trump to just his dealings with the president of Ukraine. To be clear, there now is a majority in the House for impeachment, especially with the publication of the new whistleblower complaint on Thursdays today, which reveals how the President of the United States is using his power of his office to solicit interference from a foreign country in the 2020 U.S. election. House Democrats, even in swing states, have united on this issue. It looks like a slam dunk. But here's the problem. Think about it. For House Democrats to wait this long and then impeach a reckless, lawless, racist, tax-dodging president only over his interactions with the president of Ukraine would pretty much effectively give Trump a clean bill of health, if you think about it, on everything else. Going to an election year, Democrats would be unilaterally disarming, unable to offer further substantive criticism of Trump's crimes and abuses of power across the board. And Republicans are going to ask, why didn't you impeach him for him if you had such a problem with that? I think it's so important that every single problem, every single thing, every single tax-dodging, lawless thing that this president has done, it should be put on record. If you're going to do it, you got to do it right. You can't just focus on Ukraine because, again, and it comes down to what we said, what I've said, what Virgil Texas said on the last episode of this show, is that you need to make a coherent, cohesive case that comes together, paints an image, a general image, not just one specific case where every single one in this country has to know who Vladimir Zelensky and Viktor Odachenko are. Like, no one needs to know who that is. People need to know is that this president is using the power of the presidency to enrich himself and to, for these past 2 years, try to keep himself in office and boost his political prospects. And he's done that, apparently, according to this whistleblower complaint, multiple times. He's also done some pretty sketchy things, again, with the emoluments clause, how he's handled his businesses, all that stuff. So it is so important, really, to keep this together. And I also think what we shouldn't do is forget the situation that's going on with Joe Biden, because the fact is about Joe Biden, he has a lot of problems. Like, this is not going to be something that's going to go away. We saw how, like, the last time the media tried to sweep a neoliberal Democrats scandal under the rug with Hillary Clinton, people didn't care. They just said, you know what, media, this is something that I care about. Like, these guys are both crooks. And they did a false equivalence either way. I think if you want to have the strongest Democratic candidate, if you really want to defeat Trump, you should not be getting mad at people for saying, hey, this Joe Biden thing, putting his son on a board or something like that, that's not the best thing to do. It just isn't. The fact that Trump did this, I think, is a bit worse. But it's not like Trump didn't do essentially the same thing for Ivanka and Jared. Like, these were not smart people. These are people who, like, look at Jared and 666 Central Park Avenue. Like, look at what he did with that. Like, that's not something a smart person does. Like, these kids, they needed jobs in the White House, and Big Papa, was able to give them one. Because he can, and he used his position to enrich his kids. Like, that's what he did. It's been done many times before. I don't think it's that big a deal. It's kind of your kind of average level of corruption. I think this rises above it because it's the president. It's presidential power. It's really, like, I don't think I really have to explain that much why it's that bad. But I think you definitely, though, if you're a member of the media, if you're someone who's a member of the Democratic Party, like, someone with that kind of a scandal shouldn't be pushed under the rug. Again, where there are people in the Democratic Party with that don't have scandals. There are people who are clean, like Elizabeth Warren, as I talked about with James Stanley on his channel, the JSPN, Pluto Talk. Go check that out. Like, Elizabeth Warren, she doesn't entirely, I don't think, have a clean bill of health. Bernie Sanders, I mean, everyone's made mistakes, but again, going with people who haven't done these things, at least in the Democratic Party, gives Trump a smaller target and makes people say, hey, maybe the Democratic Party isn't just a bunch of corporatists who have done awful things over the years. Maybe not all politicians are corrupt. Maybe there's some in the Democratic Party that can actually represent and fight for us without enriching themselves in the process. Like, everyone enriches themselves in office. Like, that's what people expect at this point. And everyone tries to enrich their kids, but this, I think, is going to, what President Trump did here, I think it's going to seem to a lot of people, if it's presented right, I think it's going to seem like it can be, rise to something a little bit more serious. I think that could be really the case. We are now going to go deeper into some of this. And of course, it's time to get some of the Republican reaction to this. So that is what we got here. This is some staff, a recording of his staff from the United States mission to the United Nations. That is what they're talking about here. It is, and apparently he went pretty harsh. He went pretty harsh on this, according to some tapes on this. He says, quote, I want to know who the person who gave the whistleblower the information, because that's close to a spy. Who's the person that gave the whistleblower the information, because that's close to a spy. You know, in the old days when we were smart with spies and treason, right? We used to handle, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. You know what we used to do in the old days when we were smart with spies and treason, right? We used to handle it a little bit differently than we do now, folks. We scare them. Yeah, so that is what we're going to get into. I want to see if we can play that for you in just a bit. The remarks stunned the audience, according to a person briefed on what took place, who had notes on the president's comments. Trump condemned Biden's role in Ukraine at a time when his son Hunter Biden was on the board of a Ukrainian energy company, and the whistleblower, and said the whistleblower never heard the call in question, which obviously is true, but apparently was the talk of the White House at that time. So, I mean, there is that they're going to have to deal with. The Republicans are going to have to deal with. Yeah, so here it is.
Sleepy Joe Biden, who's dumb as a rock. This guy was dumb on his best day. And he's not having his best day right now. He's dumb as a rock. So you have Sleepy Joe, and he goes up, and his kid, who's got a lot of problems, he got thrown out of the Navy for problems. I mean, look, I'm not going to, it's a problem. That's a problem. So we won't get into why and all that. But he got thrown out of the Navy. And now this kid goes into Ukraine, walks away with millions of dollars, and he becomes a consultant for $50,000 a month. And he doesn't know anything compared to anybody in this room, okay? He's a stiff. He knows nothing. He's walking away with $50,000, or as you would say in the old days, $50K a month, right? Not bad.
In the old days.
In this room like to represent the Ukraine for $50,000. That's on top. You got the job. That's on top of hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars.
Again, how is it not giving your idiot kids like an entire company to run when you become president? Like, it's the same thing that rich people do all the time. I'm not saying it's good, and I really probably think both of them should be punished for it, but Trump did it to a worse degree than Biden. Like, I'm not trying to equivocate about what Biden and Trump did. Biden did the classic rich person thing of giving your dumb kid a job. Trump did that illegally. Like, you're not allowed to do that when you're president. You're not supposed to you are supposed to give, but like, it's something like you're not supposed to give them a job really in the White House. Like, that's the same thing. Like, it's not completely illegal. It's the same sort of like sleazy, corrupt kind of thing that rich people really do all the time. And the fact that he did that in the White House, like, that's A, it's not something you're supposed to do. B, you're not supposed to you're supposed to use the White House to enrich yourself. And you're also not supposed to screw with an entire country and pretty much shake them down for much needed military aid if you in exchange for helping you politically. Like, that's not how, like, there is no equivocation here. Sure, what Biden did should not be ignored, in my opinion, it speaks to a broader problem I think a lot of Americans have with the ruling class and how they conduct themselves.